Whereas some bigger companies, for a 15-person company in the United States would be considered very, very small. So any company really, and it's bigger than that, even maybe 50 or more employees, would be people who really would not know each other and would not value friendship nearly as much as I think we're able to do.
Any other questions? We'll take one more question and then I'll continue with the question from the Google Doc. Okay, so again, if you have any questions, just raise your hand. So, how do one of the things that you mentioned is, the separation between your personal life and your work life. Maybe not in general, but how do you try to manage that? So how do you separate your personal life and your work life, or what do you do on weekends, or?
Yeah, so I think one thing that seems a little bit different is that most of us in the New York office do not see each other on weekends. That usually when we leave on Friday, we won't see each other until Monday morning. So that's for better or for worse. I mean, there's, like we said, it's super important to be friends with people, but I think, like I said, people value being able to separate what they do on Monday to Friday versus what they like to do on weekends. And so for me on weekends, I'm really into sports, so I like to play as many sports as I can and watch as many sports as I can. And that, for me, is definitely very different from what I do on a daily basis in the New York office. And so that's one way that I sort of separate that. And then the other side of it as well is I just have sort of different friends that I know from maybe growing up or college or something like that I'll hang out with as well outside of work. And so for them, they know a little bit about what I do, but not as much. And so we'll just talk about different things, and then it sort of allows me to refresh my mind when I come back to work.
Gotcha. And then, again, something related to work culture at the same time, just to get a bit more into it. Nepalese culture, we generally speaking, we would like, we try to get along with people as much as possible, and then, and when this is like a conflict that's about to come, we try to avoid conflict as much as possible. So, as a society, as a culture, we're not a very confrontational type of society. We're very tolerant, and there's lots of things that we've gone through, and we kind of we keep it inside of us. So handling different sort of conflicts, especially in the workplace, sometimes you might have disagreements with your manager, but generally speaking, we don't really contradict what our manager says because it's a very cultural thing. And so, what are your thoughts on that? And speak on that. But on the importance of disagreeing with your manager at times when you have a very strong point.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt that every single person in this room, in this company, has so many great ideas and things to offer. So that if we are not taking advantage of that, if we're not listening to one another, then I think we're not doing ourselves any favors. But it is it's sort of a tough challenge to think, okay, when do I want to voice my opinion about something that I think might be right? And typically, the way that we sort of handle that type of thing in the New York office is we really like to make it as objective as possible, so as unrelated to your personal thoughts as possible, but much more looking at what is the reality of the situation. And so the way we try and do that is just look at any sort of data that we can to help us make a decision in a conflict. So if there's a disagreement between myself and someone else in the New York office in terms of maybe what is the best sales contract to do, for example, what we'll do is we'll just test multiple types of sales contracts over a little bit of time and then look at the data and be able to say what makes the most sense to do. And so we're not necessarily arguing about what we think is better or what we think is worse, but instead we'll actually try and run an experiment and see, okay, based on the data, this is what we should do. And then we sort of are able to separate ourselves from the problem itself. And so that would be one way as well. And then in terms of other sort of conflict management, especially for my job when I am constantly talking to the clients, certainly a big part of my job is of course making them happy, and part of that is resolving conflicts when there are things that don't go as well. So maybe we had a problem with hitting a spam or something like that, or maybe the ICP is really difficult and we're not able to get as many leads as the client would want. And so one thing that I really try and do, and I as well am relatively, I do not like to be confrontational. One thing that I like to do is sort of think in advance, what might the person that I'm talking to or in conflict with, what are they interested in? What are they really trying to figure out? And if I can, or what do they really want to get out of the situation? And if I can sort of think about it or raise the issue preemptively or beforehand, before they bring it up to me, then it gives me a chance to sort of talk out the conflict before it becomes a big problem. Because many of the clients would have no problem yelling at me and telling me what they think we need to do better and what we have to do. And so if I can anticipate the problems that they're going to talk to me about, then that gives me a better chance to solve the problem and avoid the confrontation. Because the more confrontation we can avoid, the better it's going to be, of course, for me, but especially in terms of keeping clients for longer, the happier we can keep them, that's ideal.
Has there been a moment as an account manager where the client is very confrontational and is very invested and you were like, oh my God, what would you do in that situation?
Yeah, so that definitely does happen from time to time, and that is certainly one of the hardest parts of the job when we're working so hard to do our best we can, and someone really doesn't think it's going well enough or working well, and they might be upset about it. And so what I'll usually do in that case is, again, think about, okay, where are they coming from? Where are they really feeling frustrated? And so think about how I can maybe provide the answer to them before they tell me what they're really mad about. So that would be one. And then as well, I will bring in Breezy to help me handle the client. So she is outstanding at talking to them and managing their expectations and all that. So in a circumstance where I feel that I need some more help, I'll have her, and she'll sort of come in, and because she won't be as involved on a daily basis with the client, she can get a better understanding of why they might be upset, and from there can help me sort of calm them down and avoid conflict and get them back on the right track, and so they're not upset anymore.
Gotcha. So, from my understanding, based on what you said, like, if you think that, I think a proactive type of approach is better than, a reactive where if you anticipate what type of problems that will be coming, whether you're managing accounts or, any sort of things, then I think that's a better approach than being reactive and having to deal with all the scolding and yelling and all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So if I know, for example, so I'm saying that it's very, just culture, American work culture in general is very time-oriented. So what I'll do is, for example, I'll promise to the clients that I'm going to get them a new email template by a certain day. So I'll tell them that right away, so they'll know if I'm going to be able to do it or not. And so instead of, if that day comes and I do not have the email templates ready, I won't not email them and wait for them to get mad. I'll tell them, hey, sorry, something else came up, we're still working on it. And like you said, sort of be proactive about starting to solve the problem instead of waiting for them to find the problem and then getting mad.
All right, good. So, as you mentioned, some of your role as an account manager in New York, and how many clients are generally per person?
It's probably maybe about 10 or 15 for each account manager, and it depends a little bit just because on the nature of the client. So as you guys know, or as some of you guys know, we have a few different types of clients. So we have some that are managed service, in which that takes a ton of effort from everybody in the team here, and a lot of work on the account managers end, and then we have some that are just lead gen clients, so we just give them the leads. So it's easier to have more lead gen clients than it is more managed. So I think I have about maybe 15 clients or so, and that's some managed and 1 or 2 lead gen, whereas Roden has about 10 managed and 10 lead gen. So we'll have more clients than me, but they have different amounts of sort of time commitments for each client.
Gotcha. And then, as an account manager, what do you think are some of the most important skills and knowledge that you need to have?
Yeah, I think for an account manager, I think this would really apply to most every business position, would just be being really strong in communication. And I think for an account manager, that comes in to play in sort of 2 ways. So one would be talking to the clients, and one is the conflict management here, but also when I share with them how many interest bids they've gotten and how great the open rate is and things like that, that I really want to communicate how hard we're working and how good of a job we're working. So how you can sort of spin the conversation to be most effective in our, in their eyes, but on our end, I think is very important. And then the other side of the communication, I think, is being able to communicate internally with the team, both the New York team and the Nepal team, especially making sure that we're on the same page. I mean, obviously, there are challenges that we work halfway across the world from each other. So there are going to be challenges related to that. So the best that we can communicate with one another and be really transparent about what's happening with the clients and when you guys give me feedback about how things are going, the better we can communicate. I think that is really the most important skill for an account manager. But like I said, I think that applies to most everybody, in a business.
One of the things that, recently that I'm observing, a lot of account managers come on Slack really late. They stay up late till like 11, 12 p.m. And one of the questions that come up in during conversations is that do people in New York really sleep? Like, do you guys get to sleep at all? I mean, you're up on Slack all the time, and then you get to the office, and you got a full day. And so, how many hours do you sleep?
I like sleeping a lot, so I usually sleep ideally 9, which is a lot. Usually what we do in that case where we sometimes stay up later is that we'll just come into the office the next day a little bit later. So we'll write in the NY Slack group, hey, I was working with the team a little bit later tonight, I'm going to come in a bit later. And like I said, circling back to earlier on, how it's sort of all results oriented, that it doesn't exactly matter when you do your work as long as you get your work done. And so that's really, so from an account manager perspective, the number one thing is just making sure the clients are happy. So when I do that and how I do that is, can be flexible, but as long as they are. But many people in New York sleep a lot less than 9 hours. I have friends who work in the finance industry who work at big banks, and they'll work every week, maybe 70 hours per week. I could never do that myself, but they sleep a couple hours a night and that's it.
So are you looking forward to getting more clients? Because the more clients we have, the less sleep we're going to get. Are you ready for that?
Definitely ready for that. The more clients we get, the more fun it is for me. Okay. Definitely, and the more things we can keep experimenting with. And maybe I'm a little bit crazy for this, but I do like having a little bit more work. The more clients we can get, the bigger we can make the New York team, the bigger we can make the Nepal team. More clients, the better for me.
Okay, and one thing that I observed when I was in New York a couple of months ago was that Nate was, I know you walk to the office, but at the same time, you're one of the most punctual people I observed in the office. Like, you were all the first person or the second person in the office, and I think that's, punctuality is, I think, you really focus on that as well. So, and what does a typical day in the office look like? When you get to the office, do you check We Are One channel, or do you go on the NYC channel, or do you look to see clients updates? What do you do, and how does the day look like?
Yeah, sure. So, and feel free to raise your hand or cut me off if you have any other questions or specific questions about what I say here. So usually the hours of the New York office are around 9:30 in the morning until 6 p.m. in the evening. So usually I'll get there around 9:30 and I'll pull up my email as well as so that's my Nate at Fusemachines, and I as well have a client email. So that one is Nate.Levin at Fusemachines. So I'll pull both of those up. I'll pull up my calendar for the day. I will pull up, we use Zoho support to keep track of which clients we've responded to, and I will as well pull up my Slack. So I'll go and I'll look at my email, and I'll usually have maybe 20 or 25 emails, and part of that is because I get all of the productive updates. So whenever you guys say how many leads we got, I know exactly first thing in the morning how many leads we got. So I click through those, and I will as well look in my client email inbox and see do they have anything that they sent me. Maybe they want to change the ICP, or maybe they can't make the meeting today or something like that. So for me, the clients are the absolute most important thing, and being really quick to reply to them, being as fast to reply to their clients as possible is very important. So I'll make sure to look at my client inbox and see, is there anything I can answer right away?
So because you have a very client-facing role, you're talking to clients on a daily basis, you have 10 to 15 different clients that you're handling, and we don't get a sense of how much the work pressure that you guys feel. So can you elaborate on the work pressure and how much is the work pressure there?
Yeah, so it is definitely a lot of pressure in terms of handling the clients on a daily basis and all that, just because obviously there is so much work going on between the Nepal team and New York team to make the client successful. And so for me to be in a position to actually talk to them all the time, I really don't want to make a mistake on my end that might compromise the account. And so there is a lot of pressure there, and the clients, they pay a lot of money for us to work for them. So to make sure that they're experiencing success and it's worth all their time and effort, it puts a lot of pressure on us just to make sure that they're happy. And
Client success is our success. So again, let's open up the floor for any other questions. Okay, we have a question. All right, there we go. Please say your name and the department you're from.
Which candidate is more prioritized, a Harvard graduate or a highly experienced candidate?
So the question was, and correct me if I'm wrong, when some people apply for jobs, when we're looking at job candidates, who might be more valued or prioritized, someone who went to Harvard or someone who had a lot of experience. So Harvard, as you guys may or may not know, is considered one of the best universities in the United States. And so I think that would really depend on what the position is, because someone who went to Harvard would probably be very smart and would have learned a lot of good skills, and so they would probably be a good person to add to your team, but they might need more time to be valuable in that role. So someone from Harvard, for example, might be really good in terms of depending on what they studied, of course, but maybe data analysis. So if we wanted them to do a job like that could be really good if they're really numbers oriented. But someone who needs maybe more of a manager role or just sort of more experience in the field of business versus what they studied, that would be an example where we would want someone with more expertise. So I think there's an interesting mix between considering where someone studied and what they studied, and then what experience they had in the workplace. Just because I think, of course, there's valuable skills to be learned in school, no doubt, but then the skills that are relevant in the workplace, and depending on what your company does, those often take a lot of time to develop, and having more experience will make one more valuable for the company. So I think generally more experience would be valued over just an education.
Any other questions?
So, I'm Sanit from the department. So you just said that it is not grown because on accounting, but sometimes what is easy, our counterparts in university put down the dollars. They make sure that we are somehow inferior to them on what we do. So what are your opinions on that? What do you think about that?
So the question was about the relationship, I think, between New York team and Nepal team. And I think that from my experience and understanding, I do not think anyone in the New York team looks down on anyone in the Nepal team. I think, if anything, everyone in the New York team is extremely appreciative and values so much everything that you guys bring to the table. And I think that maybe if that was the case, part of it would just be a lack of effective communication on New York team's part. I don't think anyone really feels that way at all. And so if we were to come across like that, then I think that would just be because we're not effectively communicating, how important we think you guys are and all that. Because I definitely do not think that that is, the reality. And it's, it definitely is unfortunate if it comes across like that from time to time, and I do apologize for that. But I don't think anyone, really feels that way, in their heart. I think that would just be something, that would just be more of us not doing a good job, being good working partners.
Thank you.
All right, Eddie, one more question before we go back to the Google Lab. Okay. Anusha, now for customer successful.
Based on your time here in Nepal, can you say some good things about both the cultures?
About both the cultures? Yeah, so based on my experience so far, can I talk about some great things in both cultures? So I think that here it seems to be a bit more of a collaborative environment. I think that people are more willing to work closely with one another and be friends with one another in the office and maybe ask for help and that sort of thing. Whereas I think in the New York office, it's much more sort of divided in terms of who does what and working closely together. So that's one thing that comes to mind. As well, I think in terms of both places, it's clear that both offices are very hardworking. And I think that is something that is outstanding. And I think as well, another thing that comes to mind is I think both offices really value their coworkers, in the office. And I think that from what I can tell, you guys all care about one another, and that's really important. And I think a similar thing can be said for the New York office.
All right, that's a perfect segue to our next section, which is work cultures between Nepal and the US as well. So I think that was a very good transition. So how do you as an account manager, you're in such a role where you're working with the Nepal team at the same time you're working with the clients, so you get to interact with the US clients and our Nepal team. So, what has been your experience of working with the Nepal team? What are some observations? What are some moments where you feel like, wow, I didn't know that about Nepal or Nepalese people, or then, wow, that was a misunderstanding. How come they misunderstood what I said? I didn't mean that. Can you give us some examples and talk about that?
Yeah, for me, working with the Nepal team, I think working with all you guys is my favorite part of the job. You guys are, like I said, so awesome. And to be honest, if not for this job, we probably wouldn't meet otherwise. So for me, that has been a really incredible, experience so far. And then in terms of, sort of the, sometimes miscommunications and that sort of thing. So I guess, let me just say first that in terms of when I think about, working together with you guys, it's just so difficult in part because we're so far from each other. And I've said this to a few people already this week that in just 5 minutes here talking with you guys and actually being in the same room as you guys, I think we can accomplish more than 1 hour of the Uber conference. I think that's just an inherent difficulty to our job is that we are so separated, and no matter what we use for communication, it's just going to be hard with difficulties. And so that's been really crazy to see this week in terms of how much we can get done and how helpful you guys can be for with me and for me, and hopefully that you feel the same, that I can be helpful for you as well. And then one thing that comes to mind in terms of sometimes a miscommunication or something like that. One thing that's very frustrating for I think probably all of us is that when we try and problem solve on Slack, for example, because of the crazy time difference, what will happen is you guys during the day shift will maybe have some question for us in New York. And so right now in New York, it's middle of the night sometimes. So we'll come in, the New York team will come in a few hours and maybe go on Slack or email and see a question and try and do their best to answer it. But then there'll be another 12 hours until you guys are able to see their answer to the question. And so that makes it just so hard to really make good progress. And so that's definitely frustrating. I know for me, and I'm sure for you guys too. And one example of where like a miscommunication might occur, and we have no idea. I was just talking with the night team last night. I was talking with Sujan, and he was telling me that for NHATCH the other day, he had stayed up until 6 a.m. To continue working on it when he was supposed to leave at 3:30. And so I think that's something that New York team might not even know. Because we just asked, hey Sujan, can you help out with this project? Can you do X, Y, Z things? And he said, yep, I got it, and instead we'll continue working beyond when he should, and maybe wouldn't ask for as much help as he could. And so that's something that just sort of from a miscommunication standpoint, if we could clear up, that would be great.
Right. Just I kind of want to go back to that. One thing that you mentioned that was the American work culture is so results oriented, and sometimes when we have people working on night shift, but you want to get that work done, but do you think sometimes it might create a conflict where you guys are so results oriented, but we have worked all through like 8 hours already, and you still no, I gotta talk to the client. I gotta make it in 2 hours. Stay in the office. Please get it done. Please get it done. Like. Do you think sometimes that will create a conflict, and what can we do to avoid situations like that?
Yeah, definitely that can create a conflict. I think that really the root of it would be a lack of effective communication. That if the reason that I'm feeling like we really need to get something done for a client is because maybe they're very unhappy and they're going to churn, and the way that my conversation with the client has gone is that we really need to get this done, otherwise we're in trouble. And so for us to prioritize that, I think it comes down to making sure that everyone is clear on the situation and understands what the deal is, and that it's not we're working for work's sake, or we're working just because someone told me to work, but I'm working because it's in favor of the company. It's working for the on behalf of the client. And so just being clear as best as we can with one another about everything that's going on is super important. Obviously, it's like I said, really difficult with the opposite time schedules and all that. But as best we can do, I think is really important.
And you've been working with a customer success team for about 7-8 months already. What are some things that you have been really impressed with over that course of time?
Yeah, a ton of things. So many things, and they change like every week. What comes to mind in terms of what's impressed me. But one, just in terms of everyone's like diligence. Like everyone, I think, works like super hard and is so consistent with their work. I was joking a minute ago with the productivity emails that I get on a daily basis, but it's not to be taken for granted that you guys are working super hard on a daily basis and are able to generate leads when it's difficult and all that. And so I've just been really impressed with everyone's like diligence and willingness to stick with it. And one other thing that comes to mind is that when the situation is difficult, when we haven't communicated to you guys what's going on with the client or something like that you guys will continue to do your best and ask questions of us, but we'll just, generally just, the commitment to doing a good job has just been, really inspiring.
And in the same part B of that question, what could be better going forward? What could be better? I'm sure there's some things that you feel like that still could be better from working with the Nepal team or the customer success team.
Yeah, I think the first thing is just that I would want everyone here, not just customer success, but every department to feel comfortable sharing their ideas with the New York team in terms of what is working and what's not working and how we might be able to improve things. Just because there's so much that we don't know about, and we might not understand exactly how it works. And so if there's something in our process that doesn't make sense, to please ask someone in the New York team that you work with, hey, why do we do it like this? Maybe it would work better if we did it like that. And so I think the one thing that I think would be great for everybody is just feeling more comfortable sharing our opinions and our ideas on how we can improve the process or the product or whatever it is. And just being, if you have an idea, like I said, everyone here in this room is like super smart. So if you have an idea, go ahead and share. Let's have a conversation about it. And even if it doesn't change immediately, that's something to be learned from both the New York team as well as hopefully we would have a better idea here. So I think that would be just the number one thing is everyone feeling more comfortable sharing ideas about how we can improve things and being comfortable asking maybe why we do something like that. And again, it's hard with the communication, so much of it's over Slack and with the opposite hours, but even if it is just a Slack message, hey, like why am I doing XYZ things, like I think the more comfortable we can feel asking each other questions like that, I think the better we're going to be able to improve the company.
And now let's open up the floor again for additional questions. I'm sure you guys have tons. So,
my name is Nathaniel. I am from Tech Department. First of all, thank you Nimasa and Ned for this program, and we were able to understand about American culture. My question for you is, what do you say about good things about Nepal? My question for you is, what are the things we need to work on or we need to improve in order to fit in American culture or in order to do good in American culture?
So if I understand the question right, it's what things might we be able to improve among the Nepal team to better fit into American culture? I think one thing is it's a hard balance because there's some business things that can be benefited by being more similar to American culture, but also I think there's so many amazing things about Nepali culture that is amazing. But one thing that comes to mind, I guess the first thing, is just I think the time sensitivity difference between US and Nepal. So I think you maybe said that this was going to start at 11, and I'm a pretty relaxed person, so I'm fine to start a few minutes later, but many American business people would start at 11 and they would not care if you're here or not. Just making sure that you're super punctual, for meetings, both with Americans, but also, you guys can practice it internally that, if we say the meeting starting at 2, that you're not arriving at 2:02, you're arriving at 1:55, so you can be in your seat, ready to go at 2. That would really, be the biggest thing. And then other things just. I think, being just comfortable, like I said back when I was saying before, just sharing your ideas and your opinions on, what is working and, what might be able to be improved. Because I think there is a culture in the United States to feel comfortable sharing your ideas in that sense. And so as long as you guys, do feel that when you have an idea, just go ahead and share it with someone, then I think that would be really cool too. Thank you.
From tech services. So basically, we are seeing some good things about Nepal, and maybe some of the improvements we should do. So what are the things we find much better here in Nepal as a colleague than in New York?